Hello and welcome back. In this lecture, we will be working with conditional access policies. Before we apply or create any of the condition policies, let's try to assign Active Directory P1 or P2 licenses for your user group. So we have created a group called MFA enabled group for the pilot testing, and we also have assigned EMS specific license. So this EMS license will include your P2 and P1 specific licenses which are already available. And this group also have a members of three different users: Craig, Aaron, and Johnson's. So these three different IDs has been already added. That means these users also will have that specific EMS license is already assigned. Now, to work with the conditional access, go to Azure Active Directory and go to Security. So within the security, you have an option to check for the conditional access. So these are the default baselines which are created by Microsoft for you. So these policies currently are by default in a off state. So if you enable any of these policies, that specific conditional access policies will be applied. So I mean to say, here you would be actually creating some kind of conditional access policies, and also you would be testing what if tool. This is a wonderful tool whether what kind of access policies will be applied if you choose this condition or that specific conditions you try to apply, what will happen. So before you create the policy, you have an option to test it, or post to the configuration also you can test this. And conditional access policies will include all these additional manageable capabilities, such as include some of the trusted or block locations you can create with this name locations. Also, you have the preview options of custom control, which is a preview. We are not going to discuss that. And the most important one would be the terms of use. Let's say you want your team to be, or you want your end users to be accept the user agreement when they're trying to access that specific applications. You can upload your PDF files or your license files, terms and condition files, and that would be accepted by the end users. Then only you will be granting the access. And for the VPN connectivity and classic policies are no more scoped in your exam for AZ500, but for the VPN policies, you can create your custom VPN connectivity specific certificates and other things so that you can apply the conditional access. These are the classic policies which were created from the old conditional access policies mechanism from Microsoft Intune specific. So the old Intune specific policies, if you've created, it would be visible. It means if you are just enrolled into Azure portal, you don't see all these. So to begin with that, we'll start creating our name locations. To do that, I can click on new, and I can give here a specific, for example, this is your specific, and maybe this is in my US specific to one of the branch office, like maybe California CA specific office. Trusted IP addresses I want to give, let's say IP address range. So this way you can create your trusted name location. What if you are specifically looking for country or region specific? In that case, if you choose this radio button, you have almost all the countries. Let's say you want to block it, the access, if the request coming from non-European regions, or maybe from North Korea, or from location where you don't have a business, but if the request is coming, that means it's not a valid request. You can create such kind of name locations, and later point we will be using these name locations as part of your conditional access policies. You will be reusing them, so you can use that. In case in my case, I can say that, for example, India, I wanted to trust anything which is coming from India, location, and I'll treat this as a trusted, and I'll simply click on create. And if you're choosing any of the IP address, make sure you give in this format, and also trust this if you're trusting this device. But in my case, I'm just trying to demonstrate based on India, so it's one of the name location got created. Remember that there are two different places where you can create these name locations. This is the latest configuration what we have just demonstrated. Now, if you remember, we can configure these name locations from another location. Configure Mfa Trusted Ips, which is the old portal. You remember we configure here the users where we enforce the policies for any of the use to the service settings, like enabling the app password specific configuration or verification options, right? So you do have here trusted locations. So whatever the IP address range you give here or the subnetting information, that would be trusted, treated as trusted. So it's not going to ask for the password or the multi-factor authentication. That's how you can treat here. So skip multi-factor authentication for request for federated users in my intranet. So it's going to skip it. And also you can you're gonna skip this for your IP ranges or subnets which you give it here. So that's how you can configure. So I'm gonna configure this also with the saving option. So this has been successfully updated. So we did update it two places. One is here and other one would be the actual MFA portal. In your exam for AZ 500, mostly it would be reference to account.activedirectory.azure.windows.azure.com, because the content was not yet updated with respect to new location information which is from the portal.azure. So you can do it from the two places. So it's good to these two things. So we talked about the name locations. Now the terms of use. So what we can do is we can create a new terms by creating, for example, this is for all MFA enabled users example, and then also we can display name. This is like your company, for example my lab terms example. These are assume that your company name, and then what are the terms you want to create it, and terms for the using document. So you need to create your own terms specific PDF file format or whatever the file, and then you can give it, and that language specific also you can configure here. I'm uploading my PDF file which is on my desktop, terms and conditions. It's a simple text file which I wanted to upload here, and then I have to give the language of this PDF file. For example, if it is in English, I need to select here in English. If it is in a different language, you may have to choose other language by adding here another PDF file. If that is in a different format, you can give that. So in our case, we have only one file, so I'm choosing only in English. Now, requires users to extend the terms of use. You can switch on if you want to extend the users to sign in prior to the accepting the option, and required users to consent on every device, so every time they have to do it. And also there is an option for the expiry of consent. That means you can schedule it. It should happen from starting from so and so date to so and so, and biannually, because these are the options. Sometimes we might have to go and follow some kind of standards, right? Like there's a complaints policy where every time if the user coming from a specific location which is non-office location, they must have to accept our terms and conditions, so that you're legally compliant or you're as per your regulatory terms. So that kind of configuration, if you want to configure, this is a really useful option, and you can do such kind of configuration, like every 90 days they have to sign in these terms and conditions as accepted. So such kind of configuration you can do it. I will be also turning off for the required users to consent on every device. That means every device must be joined into Azure AD, so which I don't want. And then conditional access, any kind of templates if you have, or you can create another template and you can apply later point. So I can choose that so that it would be applied later point. So I'll just take this and create. So this is going to create a conditional access specific policy specific terms and conditions. So this will be available if a user is accepted or declined, the number of users and their information will be shown here as accepted or not. For now we have not yet created any of the policy, so this is count is 0 for now. So let's go back to our conditional access policies once again. By go to do that, go to security and conditional access. From within this you can create the new policy. So click on new policy. So here give the meaningful name. For example, you want to block access. So let's try to identify the scenarios. So this is a scenario 1 where you want to test your trusted IPs or trusted location. What we have configured here, the named locations should be automatically log in and shouldn't be prompted for the multi-factor authentication. That's a requirement what we wanted to do. So here I can say that MFA enabled for India, which is a location for trusted devices. So I'll just fill later point of the remaining information based on the actions which I'm going to do it for assignment. So the first one would be the here assignment. So to whom you're going to assign this? Are you want to apply it for a specific group or for all users? As we talked in the best practices, do not apply for all users. Always go for a specific user groups to be included. So I wanted to include users or a group. So we have already a group code created called MFA enable users just to test in a phase 1 for the pilot testing. If this success, I might go for the production group. So I'll just take this user group and then make sure that if you can remember our best practices, always exclude yourself or your global admins. So I'm gonna create here global admins specific account. So I don't have a group for the global admin, but I can say that yes, myself I wanted to exclude not to apply the specific rule, because if something goes wrong, I should be come back and able to log in into Azure portal and fix this problem, right? So always be specific for the groups to include, and for exclude, make sure that your global admins are excluded, right? So just click on done. So that's your user specific. Now what actions you're going to do for the cloud application? So do you want to apply for every application or a specific application? Let's say I want to apply this for only a specific application, like if I try to use the Microsoft Azure portal, I want to apply. So this is for Microsoft Azure management, which is nothing but your Azure apps, Azure portal. If you try to use this, it's gonna apply that specific policy. So I'll just choose this. There are multiple other applications. If you are trying to enable or configure for that specific application, you can configure, but in my case I'm just trying to apply for Azure management, which is the portal.azure.com, and my client apps also. So now the condition is you want to treat, you remember here we talked about the risk specific, like high, medium, low. We talked about the risk if the user is coming from if he just logged in from India and the next 30 minutes he logged in from London location, which is not possible. In that case it is treated as a risk, and whether it is a high, medium, all that would be validated based on that. So in our case we are not enabling risk. And the devices you can configure is this to be apply for all Windows devices or any of the devices. You can exclude, you can include, and also you can configure the locations. So we talked about the locations like earlier. We created here the locations and the name locations that should be visible here. If you configure any location, it means it includes all the locations regardless of your location list. But if you choose here selected list, you should be able to get it here 2 locations. You remember we created India as the location from our locations here in this name locations, right? And other one would be the from the conditional access specific MFA specific we created. So the two are coming up. So I'll just log in here and show you once again. The name is India. That's a location what we have given. So this is the India name which is coming up here, and also MFA Trusted IPs, which is this is the MFA specific Trusted IPs list. So this is the list, and the name always will be Trusted IPs. So in our case, I wanted these two should be taken, and also I'm taking here the Windows device. So click OK. So these are the 2 locations and the Windows device. And if you're trying to configure any of the preview features like client applications for the legacy applications, let's say Outlook, SMTP, or POP3, all that you can configure from here. But in our case, we are not configuring here anything with this, but you do have an option for here to configure that specific applications. And also the device state, which is again we talked about with the hybrid device, or maybe it should be compliant with the Intune policies. All that we can configure from here. So these 2 options are preview options, so do not enable for now, but it works. So click done. That means what we have done so far, we have selected users for including and excluding, and one of the cloud application which is portal.azure specific, and a condition is if they are coming from the location of any of these India or MFA trusted IP location, you are allowing. The allow or grant, it's gonna configure from the access control, but we have not done. And the later point, grant. So if you want to grant, you have an order here. So this is again an important point here. If you're trying to configure require multi-factor authentication, it means it will prompt for the user to access these applications. It will require user to enter multi-factor authentication. And also if you enable maybe here in between hybrid join example, so what would happen is it will validate all the orders from top to bottom in a order. So always remember this point. It's very important in the examination point, or when you come back to the production, it will validate from the top to bottom. So require multi-factor authentication. After validation, it will check whether this machine is hybrid join AD or not. So if that's not the case, it's not gonna show you the portal.azure or whatever the application you allowed here. So in our case, I just wanted to go as a first demo with the multi-factor authentication, and then you also have required approved client apps. So you have the list of applications. You can choose here those lists, and all these are the default Microsoft trusted or enabled applications. So if you want to configure this, you can do that. Also the preview feature, which is app protection policy, which is again from the Intune or the device management specific. Or if you want to enable all, you can simply all MFA enable user specific. You remember this is a group that we added. So now it is coming all MFA enabled group. So I need to select here for all my MFA enabled group, which is the AD group which we create. That is also visible here. So what it is doing is it is asking require all the selected controls or require one of the selected controls. So if this or this to be okay for you, then you can choose this. But if you're trying to validate all these conditions in the from the top to bottom order, then you have to take required all selected controls. So I will be selecting that, click OK. Now once this is done, you have an option for session-based control. We talked about the granting options as well as the session-based. These are the two things as per the first session which we talked about, the conditional access, right? Which comes under access control. So session-based are for Exchange, Office 365 and SharePoint specific restrictions to be applied based on the session control. But these are not part of this demo. So we did already configure for the grant specific required for all selected controls, and now we do have here option whether you want to enable or just to report only. When you enable report only, these policies are not implemented, but instead it will give you what is happening, a kind of information you would be getting out. So in my case, what I'm going to do is because this is how it's going to show you whether it's blocking or it is requiring all that when you go and check for the sign in actions, so that you understand what is happening if you enable. So in our case, we are sure, and we are enabling this policy. So this is just for Azure portal example. This is policy. So go for maximum length with splitting why you are enabling this policy, what conditions you are applying, what user groups, all that, so that it will be easy when you create more than 10-20 policies. So let's click on create. So this would create in a minute, and it will take to this window. So it just got created. Now I can see here MFA enabled India users, which is already affected this policy. So I will log into one of the Windows desktop from India location, and we will try to test it. So this policy will apply for a specific group called, in this case, MFA enabled group. So here we do have some of the user accounts. So I'll just go here and show you the users. I'll take one of the user. So I'll take Daniel Craig account and see what happens if Daniel logs into that machine. This is a machine for Daniel Craig, so it's just normal Windows 10 machine. I wanted to log into portal.azure example. I'll just log in here with the required password, and once I enter the password, it is asking for the code. You remember, as part of this demo, it shouldn't ask for the multi-factor authentication because we allowed the user, but what happened? What went wrong? So let's talk on that. If you see here under multi-factor authentication portal for Daniel Craig account, there is a configuration was set up as the enforced. That means every time he log in, regardless of your conditional access policies, that means this multi-factor authentication will take the precedence over your conditional access policies. Regardless of what you configure in your conditional access policies, it's going to ask you for the multi-factor authentication. So that's why it is asking for this code. So I hope you got this point. Now let's log in into the Windows 10. I'll just enter the code and I'll log in and log out from here, and I'll try to sign in with another user account so that this demo concludes, at least this testing for now, for the multi-factor authentication precedence. However, if you see opposed to the entering, you have this option. So if I click on accept, it will not proceed further because I didn't see what is there in the terms, right? So I'll just click on terms, and you see here whatever the PDF file I uploaded, it's coming, all that content. After that, I can accept this, and then it will proceed further with the options. I mean, wherever I need to go or I need to have the access. So in this case, it's my portal. So I'll just log out and log in with this another user account. This time I'm logging with Johnson account. The password. See, this user is not registered for MFA at all, so it will force. You see here it is asking me to register with MFA, and since it's the first time, he has to go through the app configuration or maybe a phone, mobile app, whatever it is, the similar. So we did actually check this demo earlier, so I will run in a fast forward state. And it's just displayed a code, and click on next. That would add up, and it's gonna ask me to enter a code which was showing in my phone. Click on next. And it is asking for me to approve sign in, which is a push notification. I approved it. So verification success, and it's gonna ask for some kind of code and country code and some phone number in case if I lost. I'll just go through that process. It's a dummy number which I entered, and now when I try to access that specific application, it is asking me to go through my all terms and conditions of that company. So I'll just accept, and post to that it will take it to the application, which is portal.azure.com in this case. So, and if you see from the MFA portal for Johnson, it's not enabled multi-factor authentication, but since he got already applied a conditional access policy, multi-factor authentication got registered and it got validated. So if you see ever here as enforce, that means it takes a precedence over your conditional access policy. So the best way is disable here and enable and control everything from the conditional access. And if I go back to my terms of use, I should be able to see here two now user count who are accepted. So if I just click on two, the number two, so these are the two users who are accepted with the time specific. Now we will be testing the same users from Brazil location, which is not part of India, right? So what will happen? So if you see here, this is the IP which is 191 series coming from Brazil location of Microsoft data center. So I'll just open portal.azure.com or client apps, whatever the URL. I'm entering Johnson's ID and then the password is coming. Yep, and clicking on sign in so that it would take it to the next page and see what will happen this time. So I can click on yes or no. The user has been logged in. So you can see that it was not asking for the multi-factor authentication. The reason being, the condition is being if the IPs are coming from these locations and also from a Windows, then it's gonna ask for the control will be granted with the MFA. If not, it's directly granted. That's why it's not coming up. So we configure now the multi-factor authentication so far with the different scenarios. I'll try to change the configuration of my policy in other way, turn around completely. Like currently the conditions are two or set, right? So here what I'll be doing is I'm not going to configure any of the device specific, but the locations, any location is fine, but I wanted to exclude MFA for my trusted locations, definitely, because I don't want again my users to be challenged with multi-factor authentication for my trusted locations. So I'll just choose that. So earlier what we have done is for the trusted locations we enable, so that it was asking for our India location specific users. If the user is logging from India specific, it is prompting with the multi-factor authentication. But whereas of the same user coming from Brazil, which is non-trusted location, it was not challenging for the end user. So we don't want that to happen. So our policy should apply for Brazil users. That means non-trusted location. So what we have done here, we have actually applied for any location with the exclusion of trusted locations. So that means it's going to apply the policy, and this time the user should prompt for multi-factor authentication from Brazil computer. I'm just trying to log into here on the Brazil computer, enter password, and now it will come multi-factor authentication. You see in a minute it should prompt me for multi-factor. You see, approve the sign-in request, because now it is working for, because this location, which is a Brazil location, is not trusted location. We did not add it, so it is prompting for the validating our multi-factor authentication. So I received here and I'm approving in my phone. So that it will automatically process here. So this is how it works, the multi-factor authentication specific configuration. And I should be able to log into my apps or my portal.azure.com. We do have a wonderful tool called What If. So when you're trying to create policies within the conditional access policies, or maybe you have some policy, then you can play with what if condition. So the first what if condition is you can select the required user. For example, I want to select the test user Daniel Craig example, and then I want any of the cloud application want to access, like Daniel Craig wanted to access any cloud application, and if he's coming from a Brazil IP and the country, let's say unknown, what would happen? So unknown means like any of these machines or any of these locations are which are completely unknown. So if you see what if, it says that this user, that's a Daniel Craig user, must have to require multi-factor authentication because this policy is applying. So that's how the policy gets applied. What if I change this to maybe Afghanistan, a different country, and what if? So what if again says that, hey, you still have to apply multi-factor authentication. What if I change this to India, because we have a policy configured not to ask if the user comes from India, right? So let's see. So no policies gets applied, and it will be allowed for the without the multi-factor authentication. So that's how, because it's a trusted location, so it will simply ignore that policy. So that's one of the best tool if you want to troubleshoot, you want to check it what policies are getting applied. So the first place you can go for what if within Microsoft Azure portal and check this tool. You do have multiple options, like under apps you can select whatever the applications you have. For example, we applied for Azure information protection or Azure management. So whatever the applications you are configuring, you can choose all of them and you can play accordingly. And also device platforms, like if you're trying to troubleshoot maybe from Intune with the conditional policies, then it would be easy, and you may have to work with what if conditions, like is it problem with any of the iOS specific device or Android specific device. So you can choose the conditions, and if the application is trying to access from browser or modern authentication, all that can be easily troubleshooted further. And you see here hybrid Azure AD join, or if the device is complaint from Intune. So that all can be checked here. The risk specific, we didn't talk about it, but we would be talking in the upcoming lectures. As we talked, risk or a user, if from one location to another location he quickly jumps in and try to log in, that would be treated as the risk high. So I hope this is useful for you. Thank you for watching this.